Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm on the staff team at St Mary's, and I'm going to be leading a short series of devotionals this week on the theme of holding on to hope and holding on to hope in difficult times. Our theme for Easter this year was the hope that sets us free. And we're going to be exploring 5 areas where we might find it quite difficult to hold on to hope. Areas where, and times when we might find it easy to lose our hold on hope. And we're going to be doing this by exploring mostly the Psalms. And Psalms are such a personal and profound record of so much of human life. There are some Psalms of praise and worship, but many that express really deep fears and emotions. We see lots of our themes that we're going to be exploring in the Psalms, and we're going to start today on the theme of loneliness, holding on to hope in the face of loneliness. This year has been like no other in a lot of ways, but particularly in respect to the way that we've had to interact with one another and keep apart in order to keep ourselves safe and well. We've had to be distant from one another, and that has been really difficult because we were made to live in community. We've not been able to meet socially with our friends, we've not been able to see family members, we've not been able to go to church for much of the year, and when we have been in church it's felt very different to what we are used to. So today we're going to be asking how we can hold on to hope in such times of loneliness. Using the psalm, we're going to work through 4 different stages. So first we're going to acknowledge our condition for ourselves and also before God. Then we're going to come before God and bring our fears and our loneliness before him. And then we're going to seek out God's will for us. We're going to use the Bible to help us find out what is it that God wants for us. Now that we've brought our fears and our loneliness to him, what is it that God promises us? Where can we find the hope that we can hold on to? And finally, taking steps to actually embrace what God has, what God offers to us. It might be that you're not suffering with loneliness, that you have had a really wonderful year and you've been able to see people, that perhaps you're a bit of an introvert anyway and you've actually quite enjoyed not having to hug people on a regular basis. If that's the case, I'd really encourage you to think of someone who you know is lonely. And I don't think any of us will struggle to think of someone we know who is really desperately lonely and really struggling in that. So whilst you're listening to this, whilst you're engaging and reading the Bible, why not hold them in prayer and hold them before God? Maybe ask God to show you how you can help them hold on to hope in the face of the loneliness that they're facing at the moment. So first, let's acknowledge our condition, the condition of those that we love before God. We're going to read some Psalms now which kind of reflect and might reflect how we're feeling. So first I'm going to read Psalm 13, 1-2. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? And Psalm 26, 1-6. 22, 1-6. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer, by night, and am not silent. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the praise of Israel. In you our fathers put their trust. They trusted and you delivered them. They cried to you and were saved. In you they were trusted and were not disappointed. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by men and despised by people. So the psalmist in both these psalms cries out as someone in despair, this feeling of being utterly alone and abandoned, and particularly in this sense by God even, feeling as though they've been forsaken by God. Of course, Psalm 22 verse 1 is the words that Jesus cried out on the cross as one really feeling like so alone and isolated. And the psalmist kind of expresses these feelings as though he's being unheard by God. So as we present our feelings to God, let's be honest about what it feels like to feel alone and isolated. Let's be honest about the way it feels when we feel as though God is ignoring us and not answering us, not listening, doesn't care perhaps. Let's also acknowledge and remember that God made us to be in relationships with one another. That was the part of his plan from the very beginning. So we can't and shouldn't dismiss our feelings of loneliness as though they are unimportant or inconsequential. It's very easy for us to decide and try to brush them aside, that it's not important, that other people have bigger problems. Part of this process about holding on to the hope of God is acknowledging that there are things which can cause us to lose hope, and loneliness is one of those things. The way that we've been living over the last year has challenged and changed our communities and our church life, and it's been difficult to form those relationships and continue those relationships that God intended for us to be in. So when we're feeling heartbroken and despairing and the thought of being alone is making us kind of feel very crushed and isolated, it's not being silly and it's not being weak. There's a reason that it is so difficult for us. It's because God created us for relationship with one another and with him. So the psalmist cries out to God, and so must we. Although it may feel as though our cries are unheard or ignored, let's seek God's will for us in our loneliness. I'm going to read instead Psalm 68, 5-6. A father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling. God sets the lonely in families. He leads forth the prisoners with singing, but the rebellious live in the sun-scorched land. God does not intend for us to be alone. He does not ignore the cry of the helpless or alone and afraid. He hears the one that has no protection and no stability. He hears the fatherless and the widow. And he takes the one who is lonely and puts them in a place where they will feel belonging, in a loving family, where they will be in fellowship with one another and feel safe and secure. So we know what God wants for us, but it's not always easy to hold on to that in the face of feeling incredibly lonely. So we need to make a conscious effort to embrace that, embrace his compassion and his company. God seeks and saves the lost and lonely, and he created us for relationship, and he wants us to be in relationship with him and with others. And we know that even though we can't see other people at the moment, he himself is always there. He hears our cry. He sent his Son to restore our broken relationships, and his Spirit to be with us day and night, to comfort and sustain us, to be closer to us than any person will know on this earth. God's church too provides us with an incredible church family, where young and old can continually learn and teach and grow alongside one another. One of my favourite passages about God's unending and unerring care of us is in Psalm 121. So I'm going to read that as we close for today. Why not think of someone you know who is particularly lonely at this time and pray this psalm for them or for yourself. I lift my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore.